Calling out my Clash players because we are right back at you to wrap up this Sunday with the second match in this round 2 of the winners bracket. And it's a fantastic game today because we've got Iyslander versus Bravo, Ethnic Smoke versus Zach Bunn from Team Covenant, two very established high-level players playing two very disruptive decks against each other. So I think this will be pretty exciting. And joining me once again is Uber. Uber, thanks for being here.
Great to be here. I think this matchup, like you said, two decks that are very good at ruining the plans of their opponents. And it kind of represents a matchup we were seeing fairly frequently in Classic Constructed, right? That sort of, Oldham versus Iyslander, right? There'll be some elements of that if you do follow Classic Constructed that appear here. But Ethnic Smoke, his first matchup is against Az from Go Again Gaming, right? And like this Azalea just cannot do anything about the level of disruption that they're dealing with. Really comfortable win there for Ethnic Smoke. I really enjoyed watching Zach and Elaine play. In that first round, it was Zach's Bravo versus Elaine's Kasai. And both players actually presenting some really big, really above rate turns. But it is that disruptive potential that this Bravo deck has that eventually sort of got them sort of over the line. And that's why I want to talk about these decks in a little bit more detail here, because Iyslander in Clash, there might be some, obviously, a few of those sort of more expensive cards you don't take here, but you still get to bring in probably the most powerful card that Iyslander has access to in that Aether Icevein.
Yeah, actually, Aether Icevein was just recently banned in Blitz, but that happened after we established this rule set, so nothing we can do about it now. We're just playing with how it was written. But yeah, that card is really, really strong, and of course, Ethnic Smoke is running it in that full playset of colors, red, yellow, blue, just trying to be as disruptive as possible. But it is to note, when you're coming in for probably 4 Arcane and below, Bravo's likely to be pitching into that. Normally, you'll see Bravo decks take Null Rune 4 pretty happily into Wizards. So I think the red ones are going to be what's really, really coming to the forefront to push through damage and disruption for Ethnic Smoke here. But, that's also accompanied by a lot of interesting play in the reaction window for both players. Ethnic Smoke, even without cards like Stormstriders, you're able to respond once you've got full information on what's been pitched, how many cards are in hand, to actually come over the top when lethal's being presented and hit people with arcane damage that kills them first before their attacks resolve. And so that's something that's always going to be on top of Ethnic Smoke's mind here when he's tracking the resources in play, how many cards are in hand for Bravo. But, that's also happening on the flip side, because there's a card called Pummel that I think Zach really likes to play.
I mean, we saw it come out multiple times against Elaine, and one of them was actually just on you present this really innocuous Anathos for 4. Yes. Your opponent says no blocks, you pummel it, and then of course you get the +2 from the cards that you have in your pitch zone, and all of a sudden you've turned this 4 damage into 10 damage. Yes, you don't get the on-hit discard trigger, right? But it's obviously it's a pretty hefty attack. I mean, how many 2-for-6 attack reactions do we know of? Like, I don't know of very many, I'll be honest with you. Even Warrior doesn't have access to this level of tech classic LSS design policy, but it's very, very powerful. And I also got to say, we see that a random sort of all-star sneak in here to this Bravo deck in Thump. With Goliath Gauntlet. Thump is actually dirty, Ethan.
Yes, that came up huge in that game that we just saw as well. It's adding to this disruptive package that Bravo has. When you're limited to running your commons and rares for the majority of your deck, cards like Thump start to look really good because you're missing out on things like Final Crush, right? So yes. Thump comes in to fill some of those holes. And when you're stacking your deck with Pummels, when you've got Goliath Gauntlet on the board, it looks really strong. And actually, now that we're looking at Zach's deck list, we can confirm he's got that full AB4 set plus Sledge. So highly likely that that's going to be the plan he brings into the Iyslander matchup here. Just try to protect yourself from as much of the arcane damage as possible, and always at minimum return 6, which, hey, that demands 2 cards or maybe even a bit of damage leak because of all the 2 blocks in Iyslander.
But I don't know about you, man. Like, I've seen both the deck lists now. These two guys are also extremely clever, very talented players. Normally Zach's on Briar. We kind of saw him with like a really interesting Briar list that was like a little casino-esque, used a lot of cards that would let you opt and then make sure like Tome of the Arknight and Sonata would get full value. We saw that, I think, at Pro Tour, was it in Pro Tour Jersey, maybe even in Lille. And Ethnic Smoke is someone who picked up Iyslander like from the beginning, but also dabbles heavily in Rune Blades. If you see on his channel, he does a lot of great gameplay breakdowns. So I'm pumped for this game. We've got two incredible players with two very powerful decks in this Clash format. I'm pumped.
Yeah, and the good news is, reminder, whoever loses this matchup is still not out. Because if we take a look at the bracket real quick, of course, these guys are playing for that basically semifinal spot, but the loser is going to be bumped down to the loser's bracket where they get another shot here. So the loser of this matchup is going to be playing against a deck we already saw piloted by Red Zone Rogue in Arachne, because he did take down Levia in that round one losers bracket match. So pouring out for Levia, she just still is missing out on her wins apparently. But this is pretty exciting because, like you said, great players, great decks, and this isn't the end of the line for either of them. So let's just check it out.
We have Ethnic Smoke on the left here on Iyslander, starting on 18 life. On the right, it'll be Zach Bunn from the Wolfpack on Bravo. And we're rolling now to see who goes first. It's going to be Zach Bunn to start us off. He does have that Sledge of Anvilheim. Again, still a pretty efficient way to pressure damage if you don't want to throw cards into the bin. So will be a good look here in this matchup. A common one for Guardians against Iyslander.
Yeah, I love seeing the difference in equipment loadout here because you're going for the same consistent game plan in every single equipment piece on Zach Bunn's side, which is give me AB1. But that's completely different on Ethnic Smokes. We've got Glacial Horns coming in, Spellfire Cloak, Goliath Gauntlet, and Ironhide, each piece doing something a little bit different actually. A little bit of an aggressive front, a little bit of a more defensive spot in the legs, utility piece in the helmet, and then resource in the chest. So just completely different ways to approach this matchup. But of course, Zach has to respect arcane damage. This is not a matchup where you're likely to be able to race, especially with how many blues you get in your deck. Having 4 AB plus Sledge is just a very effective game plan into Wizard. But talk about what's maybe not so effective is starting with a random card like this blue Emerging Dominance.
Hey, I mean, look, Iyslander likes to block, so this card is going to give the next Guardian attack action card in the next turn +1 and dominate. So especially if Zach's able to force like a non-hit effect, maybe even like a crush effect with that attack, it could be relevant. So and again, you're not really letting your opponent do too much on this first turn. You're setting something up, you're establishing some degree of board presence. Okay, it's not quite a Genesis on turn 0, but it doesn't suck either.
No, it's that dominate, which is going to be big, like you mentioned already, because Iyslander's a deck that's pretty comfortable blocking down with 2 cards per turn. It sometimes just fits what their hand wants to do exactly. So this is a bit of playing with your cards face up, though, right? Zach's just saying, do your worst to me now, because I'm likely to abuse this +1 dominate. But
hey,
without...
the secret's out. I'm going to hit you in the face.
True. What's new for Bravo, right? That's always the plan. But it's up to Ethnic Smoke to be able to punish that without filtering his hand at all. And it looks like this was a pretty decent opener. It's an Amulet of Ice dropped that's going to start establishing some disruption for later in the game. And then a very efficient 2-card play with a red arcane damage spell coming in for 4, and then leaving 2 floating for most likely a follow-up Waning Moon.
Yep, and you're spot on, Ethan. Another 2 coming across here. And okay, so Zach definitely wants to get value out of this dominate effect if he is reluctant to pitch to this arcane barrier. Homie just takes 6 damage to the breadbasket and says, keep it coming. I'm very curious to see how he follows this up. When you see a Guardian player clutch onto those cards, you know that something is afoot. Here's a Winter's Bite here coming out. And this is in response to that Emerging Dominance popping. So Zach actually gives Ethnic Smoke a window to do something sort of before Zach can really act here with that aura popping.
Yeah, and Winter's Bite is actually the perfect disruptive piece because it's going to tax with a Frostbite and a resource, right? So that's 2 resources being pulled out of the turn cycle here, which looks like Zach was able to just play through. He's throwing that Crippling Crush for 12 dominate, but honestly, that could have been in a weird spot. Maybe some Reds were in that hand where the Winter's Bite plus Frostbite really messed that up, but lucky for Zach, that's not what's happening. This is just 12, Crush Effect, Dominate, everything looking scary for Ethnic Smoke.
Right, normally you need your hand to line up really well to use your Bravo hero ability to give your attack action card dominate. But because you've been able to establish something earlier in the form of that aura card that we see on turn 1, the Emerging Dominance, this is much cheaper. It actually means that Zach Bunn can do this and have an Arsenal card, which is really quite uncommon. We'll see what the answer is going to be here from Ethnic Smoke. They've already played their Arsenal card this turn, of course, in that Winter's Bite. Obviously, having played a non-attack here, there's the chance to still sort of Waning Moon, but this is serious damage. This is nothing to sneer at, especially when the Iyslander in this position doesn't have a whole lot of armor that can block. So a Fate Foreseen may be the only card that gets stuck in front of this one.
Yeah, Fate Foreseen, I mean, at least it was 4 value there because Dominate was forcing just 1 card defense. So he's protecting his life really well in this position. Just block 4, maybe lose some cards here that would have been good for Arsenal, but if he can end up with at least 1 blue or something that he actually wants in that Arsenal slot, he's going to end up happy. It's information we just don't know as of yet, but he did discard a yellow and a red. So
that could be amazing.
Yeah.
Could be amazing for Ethnic Smoke to still be able to pocket a blue card after having 2 stripped from his hand, right? When we see that flipped, we'll know just how lucky or otherwise he got.
I think from the way he crafted that hand, I think it was probably more likely to block with the reds and yellows if he had that Fate Foreseen to potentially throw an Arsenal if his hand had no other blue. So I think he was hoping that the blue was kept there and paid off, perhaps. We'll see if it comes out. Hedging that he actually kept it there. But, Ethnic Smoke, he's a man that doesn't need a lot of luck. He's a very good player, even when facing down this unending aggression from Zach's side with a Zealous Belting for 5 go again coming right out of the gate.
Yeah, and that's a debilitate in pitch. So, like you said, the Zealous Belting go again is going to be turned on here. And Ethnic Smoke's just taking it. Going down to 5 life here. Spending any cards because he knows there's going to be a follow-up here from Zach at some point. The question is, okay, what point does Ethnic Smoke want to take the wrench and throw into the works here? This looks like a Thunderquake being pitched. No, it's Showtime instead. Bravo getting activated here. So, okay, attack action cards with cost 3 or more are going to get Dominate.
Yeah, so this could be really scary still. Breaking the chain, but not like that was a big deal for anything to do with the equipment pieces on board here. So Zach was just holding a bit of information. Maybe he needed to pitch in to whatever this Arsenal card is going to be, which, as we see now, is a blue Ice Ball. It was a blue, like we mentioned. This is going to throw a Frostbite into the mix, which could really mess with how Zach was hoping to pay for this turn. So great response window for sure, because that's 2 resources that went into a Dominate that may not even end up with a follow-up swing just because of that Frostbite tax.
Yeah, again, I mean, Zach has to have asked himself what the odds are of Ethnic Smoke being left with a blue card to be able to do this on Zach's turn. I wonder what level of contingency there is here. Like, this card in his hand, it cannot cost more than 4, I think. Otherwise, it just cannot be played. So I guess maybe you look at the sledge and go, I guess I could show you one of these. And yeah, no block here. I must say though, like, if I know, Ethnic Smoke is not the kind of player that needs to rely on luck to win, but you'd be pretty happy to have just gotten rid of the red and yellow card on that previous turn, especially being down to 5 life. Being able to disrupt Zach at this point is got to feel incredible.
Yeah, for real. With the way life is, I think most Iyslander players might feel a little too scared. But there it goes. When you slow down a turn like this and just make it a 6 with a sledge, that is quite a bit of disruption you threw there. Because with that blue Thunderquake pitched, I think you're right. It was probably just a very large attack coming up after the end of this that would have otherwise had Dominate and probably pushed lethal onto Iyslander, but no longer the case.
It could have been a Thunderquake as well, right? Who knows? Obviously, that being a 6 cost card, but so spending 2 resources for nothing. Zach was hedging that Ethnic Smoke did not put a blue in his arsenal there. He has to have known there'd be some form of Frostbite token if that were not the case. So sometimes that's just the way the chips fall here. It's going to be the boots thrown in front. This will be pitched 2 in order to provide 2 block, and Ethnic Smoke says, I'll go to 1 quite happily.
Wow, even though he doesn't get forced to play around the Dominate there from the Bravo ability on Sledge, Ethnic Smoke said, I'm just blocking with my legs here. We're just playing efficient with that 1 floating from the Ice Ball.
Be succumb to
going to 1. Yeah. Yep, because the Glacial Horns does pop off here now that he's ahead on the Arsenal trade. Followed up by Goliath Gauntlet. So this could be a huge tempo buy for Ethnic Smoke, just trying to lock out this turn cycle for a positive in the end, even though he ended it at 1.
Yeah, this is definitely an attack action. He's trying to make sure no defense reaction can come out of the arsenal here, so he freezes that first. Succumb to Winner's Troll, because if it's fused, it could blow up a frozen card in arsenal, so that's like a little combo you can do. But Final's Fighting Spirit, gaining you a life, presenting a whopping 9 damage, also doesn't suck. With Zach Bunn locked out of the arsenal, which we have no idea what that card is, he was forced to pocket it at the end of his previous turn. If that's something like a Staunch, he's not very happy to have to deal with this. So a 2-card block comes in.
And that's 2 cards that were red in that color strip there. So Zach's likely protecting some blues in hand to just go ahead with his sledge play, as we're likely to see coming up. But the other thing that Glacial Horn's Freezing Arsenal does is also buy a turn of potential pummel threat, right? Because that arsenal is going to be frozen until the end of Zach's turn. So if Ethnic Smoke wanted an entire turn cycle of just full information, he got it. Because now he doesn't have to play around pummel, even if 2 floating is left up after this sledge swing.
Who would have thought just having a card that says, hey, you can freeze your opponent's arsenal or one of their allies would actually be quite sweet here. Obviously, Coronet Peak is a pretty good card as well, but being able to bring in these Glacial Horns and show why they were really quite valued, especially in the limited format they were played in, was quite fun. So Polar Blast comes up here. Now, next attack gets Dominate, obviously, which is, not relevant here because this is just coming out of Ethnic Smoke's arsenal on his turn, but it does create that Frostbite here, which is what we're looking for.
It's all about that mental game. You ask your opponent, would you like to pay 1? And looks like Zach didn't, but he is paying into the Arcane here instead that the Waning Moon is presenting. So paid into that and really just passed the turn by doing so. He pitched a red and a blue, so that means his hand was 3 reds, 1 blue. Not really what you want to see when you're trying to pressure down an Iyslander that's at 2 life. So what a great use of the Glacial Horns, just followed up by now we're seeing even another turn that's likely to strip away Zach's hand with an Aether Icevein blue Fuse. Now, this isn't going to be a lot of damage, but the Fuse trigger does a couple things. Number 1, it makes that Amulet of Ice potentially active this turn, right? And of course, when you're fusing, you're giving free information anyway. Might as well lose that card to also follow up with Waning Moon. So that's 5 damage presented. Ethnic Smoke just really has to feel good, keeping 1 card for Arsenal as well.
Yeah, and having fused a card, like you said, that Amulet of Ice can be activated to put another discard unless you pay 2 trigger on the stack. Something that's going to become increasingly frustrating for Zach, who needs 2 cards to even swing with his weapon here. So that's the Waning Moon comes in for 2. And and look, I mean, Ethnic Smoke sees that Zach is reluctant to part with any more cards. So now he's going to force him to do so.
Yeah, and it really must be frustrating, like you said, because Zach got Ethnic Smoke so close, got him to 1 just 2 turns ago. And now it's been just a huge uphill battle to actually close the game. But these kind of positions, if Ethnic Smoke didn't have room to Arsenal, would feel pretty good for Zach. You've got 2 floating, you're presenting lethal, you're threatening pummel, but even just with 1 Frostbite here, that plan no longer can take action. You won't be able to pay for the pummel on top. So Ethnic Smoke's still playing with just a lot of information in this game.
Yeah. And again, Iyslander wants to block with 2 cards, by the way, each turn cycle. That works out for her quite well in terms of blocking 2 cards, having a card to pitch towards Waning Moon if you have something out of Arsenal, and then being able to take 1 card into your Arsenal the next turn. So generally, she's pretty happy to do this. So this is not necessarily a threatening number that's being shown. And like you mentioned, the possibility of a pummel is taken off the table if there's something out of the Arsenal here to create a Frostbite. So far, there's going to be a little bit more where this came from, of course, as the Sink Below comes in as a defense reaction, adding 4, and of course allowing Ethnic Smoke to do some filtering here.
Wow, really interesting how they chose to play that attack trade out, because there was a window then by going to reactions that Zach could have pummeled. But I think Ethnic Smoke is tracking the pitch a little bit here, because that was a blue pummel pitched, that was a red pummel pitched a couple turns ago as well. So that's really just 2 more copies in the deck, and he must have just called, you know what, you just don't have it.
That's quite advanced. I think a lot of players, like myself included, don't do that nearly often enough, right? Just obviously to sort of pay attention to what is getting pitched. Guardians throw a lot of cards in their pitch zone, and you really want to make sure you can see them. If you're playing 1, ask to see them as well, because that's right. No Frostbite, nothing from Ethnic Smoke's Arsenal on that turn would not have been able to sort of stop the pummel devastation. So Scalding Rain, fair enough. This is just going to present 2 arcane damage here.
Yeah, not a great use of these 2 cards. It's just going to end up being 4 damage total across 2 sources, which, I mean, in a way is like a arcane breakpoint, right? You're coming in for 2, then 2, so if you're pitching a blue, there's still 1 leak, but in this kind of position, Zach is actually saying no arcane barrier and just eating maybe the entire 4 damage. That's a lot to when you're playing into an Iyslander to go down to 2 yourself. That's incredibly threatening.
Yeah, I feel like you cannot do this.
Oh, but he does it.
Well, we have a red heavy hand. Okay.
But even with a red heavy hand, you're almost just accepting defeat, because if any arcane comes through, that's just the game.
You have to be so conservative with your first action on Bravo's turn here.
Yeah,
So
and
it's time to
he's
activate
leading.
Bravo.
That's 2 resources committed, giving Ethnic Smoke potentially even more room to just smack him for a lot of arcane damage, because that's 2 that's basically saying, I don't have pummel, you don't have to play around it. Whereas maybe if he'd kept that advantage up, then Ethnic couldn't go for lethal, because look at this. This is so many cards on the table. He is saying, I have 2 floating. He's saying, I have maybe 1 to 3 more life in hand. If you kill me, you kill me. All cards on the table.
Yeah, what's this last card, right? Is it a blue? Big question. And even if it is that going to be enough? There's like it's the worst possible card that Bunn could have seen here. Emeritus Scolding comes out 4/4, and that's just the beginning.
Oh, yeah, this is the most damage that you can actually put in Arsenal in this kind of situation. Emeritus comes in for 4, then 3. That's 7 damage. Of course, we mathed it out. All Zach was able to prevent there was 5 arcane barrier. So that's the 2 coming in to cement Ethnic Smoke as the winner of this match on Iyslander. Wow, what a great game. And he's going to be moving on up to face the victor of yesterday's match. It's going to be Dash versus Iyslander, which is another pretty exciting game. But hey, overall, I was really happy to watch this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, you have 5 pitch left for that last turn. So all your Iyslander opponent really... So it was a blue, right, in Zach's hand. All your Iyslander opponent needs to do is show you something for 3 arcane damage out of the arsenal. It's really not that hard for her to do that, right? Whether it's like... it's like Ice Bolt will get you there. Either Ice Vein Blue will get you there. There, obviously, we saw there are like Emeritus Scolding is overkill in that particular situation. So I wonder, like, yeah, Zach's sort of crunching the numbers and saying, well, look, I have to try and win the game here. But spending, that Bravo Dominate ability, does he have to spend that 2 resource? Is he maybe just happy enough presenting at 9 damage or whatever it was that he was actually putting across the table? Oh, look, I don't know. Not a Guardian player. I'm a Warrior player, so watching Guardians lose makes me feel really happy. Still, very well played by both guys. I think that was really excellently piloted. And let's not forget, Ethan, how big the life deficit was, like halfway through that game. Iyslander was taking so much damage.
I think that really just showed a masterclass in Ethnic Smoke. Pikachu is an amazing player. He top-8'd a calling with Iyslander really early days before anyone had really cracked the deck. Singapore, yeah. And this was with Arcane Iyslander. So before it was taken the more physical damage route. So he is someone who's always been doing the math first on arcane damage, setting up board states rather than just playing for best math per hand, which is what you see more in the Michael Hamilton build. So if anyone is really going to impress me on Iyslander, it's going to be Ethnic Smoke. The guy's a legend, and really excited to see him continue on here.
Yeah, again, Iyslander versus Dash is going to be great. Something we got to see in the Goliath Gauntlet as a matchup in Classic Constructed. And it's quite interesting. It can be tough for the Iyslander player if the Dash player is able to start to, present damage in a really cheap fashion, which is kind of what Wes has been doing this entire tournament run so far. So cannot wait to see those 2 come clashing together. And then Zach obviously goes to that lower bracket, takes on Red Zone Road on Arachne in a lower game. A matchup I have limited experience seeing. So again, it's another game I'm looking forward to seeing. How Arachne's been able to navigate things without like Black Tech, Whisperers and some of those other... Yeah, don't know, but he's making it happen. So it's going to be a banger of a match as well, Ethan.
Right, and I think we're actually looking to wrap things up as well as we talk about these future games. Next weekend, if everything goes according to plan on the back end, is going to be this semifinals, losers bracket finals, and then true finals, all tied up in a bow for you next weekend. So I'm hoping that comes together for you all. But Uber, thanks for joining me this weekend. It has been a ton of fun, my friend. And hey, we'll catch you all next week.